This video is for English learners who want to improve their English. The English coaches, parents, and learners all can listen to this story. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15th, 1769, on the island of Corsica, a beautiful but troubled land in the Mediterranean Sea. Corsica had just become part of France, and many people on the island still dreamed of freedom. Napoleon's family was not rich, but they were respected. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, was a lawyer, and his mother Letizia was strong, strict, and brave. She taught young Napoleon discipline and courage from an early age. As a child, Napoleon was serious, proud, and very intelligent. He loved reading books about great heroes, famous battles, and powerful leaders. He admired men like Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. Even as a boy, Napoleon dreamed of doing something extraordinary. At the age of 9, Napoleon left Corsica and went to mainland France to study at a military school. Life there was not easy. He spoke French with a Corsican accent, and many classmates laughed at him because he was poor and different. Napoleon often felt lonely, but instead of giving up, he worked harder than everyone else. He spent long hours studying mathematics, history, and military strategy. He believed knowledge was power. When Napoleon was only 16 years old, he became an officer in the French army. Soon after, France entered a time of great chaos known as the French Revolution. Kings and queens lost power, and the country was filled with violence, fear, and opportunity. For a young soldier like Napoleon, this was the perfect moment to rise. Napoleon first became famous in 1793 during the Siege of Toulon, where royalist forces had taken control of a city with British support. Napoleon showed brilliant military skill by placing artillery in exactly the right positions. His plan worked, and the city was captured. Suddenly, people across France began to notice the young officer. A few years later, in 1795, Napoleon saved the revolutionary government from an angry mob in Paris. With what became known as a whiff of grape shot, he used cannons to stop the rebellion. It was a brutal act, but it made him a national hero. In 1796, Napoleon was given command of the French army in Italy. Many thought he was too young, but Napoleon shocked Europe. He led tired, hungry soldiers to victory after victory against stronger enemies. His speeches inspired his men. He told them, "Soldiers, you are naked and poorly fed. I will lead you into the most fertile plains in the world." And he did. Napoleon became not only a great general but also a legend. His victories in Italy made him powerful, admired, and feared. Soon, he married Josephine de Beauharnais, a charming widow who became the love of his life, though their relationship would later face many struggles. Napoleon then led an expedition to Egypt, hoping to weaken British power. Although he won some battles, his fleet was destroyed by the British Navy under Admiral Nelson. Still, Napoleon returned to France as a hero because political troubles at home gave him another chance. In 1799, Napoleon seized power in a coup d'état. He became first consul of France, effectively the ruler of the nation. France was exhausted from revolution, and Napoleon brought order. He reformed laws, improved education, strengthened the economy, and created the Napoleonic Code, a legal system that still influences laws in many countries today. But Napoleon wanted more than order. He wanted glory. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French in a grand ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. By placing the crown on his own head, Napoleon showed the world that his power came from himself. not from the church or tradition. As emperor, Napoleon built one of the greatest empires Europe had ever seen. Through brilliant battles such as Austerlitz in 1805, he defeated powerful enemies like Austria and Russia. At Austerlitz, often called his greatest victory, Napoleon proved himself a military genius. Across Europe, kings trembled at his name. His empire stretched across much of the continent. He changed borders, created new kingdoms, and placed family members on foreign thrones. Yet power can be dangerous. Napoleon's ambition grew too large. He tried to defeat Britain through economic warfare, blocking trade, but this hurt Europe as much as Britain. Then came Spain, where a brutal war drained French strength. His greatest mistake came in 1812, when he invaded Russia with over 600,000 soldiers, the Grand Army. Napoleon expected a quick victory, but the Russians retreated, burning cities and food supplies behind them. Winter came early and fiercely. Snow, hunger, disease, and cold destroyed his army. Only a small fraction returned. It was one of history's greatest military disasters. After Russia, Napoleon's enemies united against him. In 1814, Paris fell, and Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the small island of Elba. For many men, this would have been the end, but not for Napoleon. In 1815, he escaped Elba and returned to France. Soldiers sent to arrest him instead joined him. His return, known as the 100 Days, was astonishing. Once again, Napoleon became emperor. Europe, however, would not allow his return. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon faced his final battle at Waterloo in present-day Belgium. There, British and Allied forces led by the Duke of Wellington, along with Prussian forces, defeated him. It was the end of his empire. This time, Napoleon was sent far away to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, where escape was impossible. In exile, Napoleon spent his final years reflecting on his extraordinary life. He spoke of battles, politics, mistakes, and destiny. Though he had once ruled millions, he now lived as a prisoner of memory. On May 5, 1821, Napoleon Bonaparte died at the age of 51. Yet death did not erase him. Napoleon remains one of history's most fascinating figures, a man of genius, ambition, courage, and controversy. He rose from a small island boy to the Emperor of Europe. He reshaped nations, inspired millions, and changed history forever. Some remember him as a tyrant. Others see him as a hero. But all agree on one thing. Napoleon Bonaparte was a man who refused to live an ordinary life, and his story still echoes through history centuries later. Thank you, my friend, for listening to my story. If you find this story interesting, please leave a comment. I wish success in your English learning journey.